It's your open source advocate, and I'm back with another video. And today I wanted to cover something on Home Assistant that I think is pretty useful. So I've in the past shown you how to set up your Lovelace dashboard, and it was, a bit of a mess. So I kind of want to show you some different options when you're looking at your dashboard of how to set things up in grids and really make them more useful. So if you look here, I've got a couple of cameras, and I've got these on different views. And I've got the signs that I use out front with my family and some bulbs and things like that. Then I've got a Roku media player, and I've got the sconce lights set up for my room here. You can see that they're on, and then I've got a couple of scenes where these bulbs don't change, but I can use these scenes to change the brightness levels and things like that. And I've got the air temperatures for the different sensors in my home. So as I switch between these different scenes or these different tabs in the dashboard, you can see that things are laid out pretty nice and pretty clean. And if you try to do this from Lovelace, it'll do its best to kind of make things nice and clean, but there's actually ways that you can almost force this kind of stuff to happen. So I want to talk about how we do that. So if you have your Home Assistant ready, you can just minimize this to kind of see what it looks like whenever you don't have everything already set like that, so that you can see that it widens out just a little bit as well. But what I'm going to do is add a new tab, and we're just going to kind of start clean, and we'll kind of try to do something similar to what we have here. It may not be exactly the same, but the concept is that you use grid cards to do these kind of layouts. And there's several videos out there on YouTube that can show you these things if I don't cover something that you're really interested in on this topic. So here we've got these tabs that we can create, and of course you can always add another tab, so we'll just add a new one. And we're just going to call this test tab. And then you can give it an icon if you want to, but it replaces the title with the icon. So it depends on what you're looking for. If you know what the icons represent, then it's pretty easy to move between those inside of this. And it can be much more easy to use when you're using this on a mobile device for sure. But you can kind of decide whether you want that in words or want it in icons. If you wanted to have a special URL, you can give it that, but you don't have to. And then of course you can come down and you can set a theme if you have other themes installed. I don't. And then finally you can say again panel mode, but again panel mode does something different, so I don't want to really do that right now. But for now we'll call this test tab. And there it is. Here's our blank tab. There's nothing on it yet. So the first thing we want to do is click on add to add an object. And we're going to go here to the search, and we're just going to type in grid, and we want this one here, this grid card. And when this comes up, it tries to build a preview here. Well, there's nothing there yet to preview, but you can see here you have the number of columns, and you can change this by clicking up and down or just typing in the number, and whether or not to make it square. So what we're going to want to do is change this down initially to 1, and you see what happens here. It expanded out, but I'm also going to turn off this. So you see now it jumps way up here, so it's not trying to fill the space with a certain amount of stuff. So once you've got the grid card, now you can put other cards inside of it. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a nested grid. So we're going to click here. We're going to type grid again, and we're going to pick that card. So now you see I've got this thing kind of nested. So I've got this first tab, and I've got the grid card layout info here, and the grid card layout info here. So if I want my first item to be what I had on the other screen, which was my air conditioning and control, I would just basically take this down again to 1, and you'll see why. So I'm going to create this as a single column item, and again I'm going to turn this off, but I'll leave it for a minute just so you can see what it looks like. And we're going to go into air. Let's see if I can find that. Maybe it's temperature, and we can always just scroll, so you can just scroll through the list and see if you see the item that you're looking for. I'm trying to remember. It seems like it was its own special thing. Let's see. Yeah, right here. So climate control or thermostat is the one that we're looking for. So we're going to click on that, and you see right away we get the thermostat set up, and it knows what it is for the most part because I only have one thermostat in my home. If you have more than one of these things, you may have to select the right one. But in this case, it picked my ecobee, which is great, and it gets the temperature. Now there are other things you can set up, so you can name this thing. And my ecobee is kind of the default, but you can just name it like home, and it's going to just put home. Or if you have multiple things that you're monitoring, maybe you have one for work or one for your office if it's a separate space, so you can just kind of define what that is. So home is fine. And then down here again with theme, you can change the theme if you have theme cards set up, but really that's all there is to this one. Now you see here when I added that next grid, it added a 1, and here you can see that it adds a 1 because I have this set as a single column. Now what I want to do is under this first level grid, I want to add a new item. So when I do that, I want to go and create something similar to what I had over here, which is underneath this. I want to have maybe my other, let's just get my other temperature readings off of my ecobee. So I've got the main ecobee itself that reads temperature, and then I've got two other sensors set in my home. So we can go and actually find those things. So we're going to do a gauge. We're going to do, let's see, we're going to do a grid again. So we're going to click on that. And you'll see it created a space down here underneath. So on this one, I am going to leave it 3 because I have 3 items that I want to put in this grid. And I'm going to create a gauge. I'm going to select gauge. And then here, I'm going to go look for, and if you erase this out, you can kind of just type, and we're going to get ecobee. So that does that. I'm looking temperature. There we go. So I've got these different sensors. So here's my main ecobee temperature, which it shows right here anyways, but we'll go ahead and get that. And you see it shows it in the grid, or in the gauge. And we can name this main. And then the units, we can put in the units if we want, but it's already got it in degrees Fahrenheit. You can change the theme, and then 0 to 100 is really not relevant actually. It's probably more like, you know, it could go 0 to 120 technically, where I live. I mean, this is Fahrenheit, so understand that's not as hot as it seems, but let's just call it 115. Hopefully it would never be that hot in my home, but we'll kind of give it that. And then we can also set up some different things that say, hey, what's good, what's bad, and what's like, hey, you really need to take care of this. So we can give it some color. So if we want it to be green, we'll say that that's anything from, and this is kind of a weird way to scale this. I can't unfortunately put like highs and lows, but we can kind of work that way. So, you know, anything from 65 up, and then if I want yellow, let's just say that that's hot for sun, or actually let's just say that that's cold. So we'll say anything, you know, 0 up to 65, and then anything from 65 to 82. So if it gets above 82, I think that's how it will work. It will be red. As long as it's between 65 and 82, it should be green, and if it's below 65, it'll turn yellow. So we've kind of given it some coloring. This should function the way that we expect. I just want to remember these numbers, 65, 0, and 82, because we're going to do another one of those, because I have 3 of these gauges. So I'm going to go ahead and just click on the plus here, and I'm going to do another gauge. And you'll see now it puts a second tab, and it sets that gauge next to it. So here I'm going to put temperature, and this one I'll do my living room temperature sensor, and on that one you can see it's slightly different. So the living room temperature is a little hotter than the hall, or a little cooler than the hallway, but again I need to set everything the same. So I'm going to call this living, and I'll move this down, and this is again 115. So it's similar in the way that it shows that scale. And then down here we can actually set this to be the same. So 65, 0, and 82 maybe. There we go. So those should look about the same. They're a little bit different from each other, and that's something that's to be expected. You know, throughout the house the temperature does vary. So we're going to do one more time, and we're going to get that third one in there, and it's a gauge again. So we just type gauge, we click it, and on this one I want my temperature, and it's the bedroom temperature. So I have a bedroom that's way across the house from the rest of this stuff, so you can see it's a little bit warmer than the rest of the house in this case. In the winter it's a little bit cooler, so trying to figure out how to fix that airflow situation to make it a little bit more stable. But this is bedroom, and again the units will leave this. We're going to change to 15, and oops, I keep doing that with the scroll wheel. There we go. We'll turn this on, and again 65, 0, and 82, and we're done with that. So now let me go back. So if you want to change any of these, you just click on the tab where you were working on it, and down here I'm sure I changed this. Yes. So let me just adjust these so they're all 115, And then I'll go back up here. And that one's already on 115, good. So we'll hit save. And now we have our first set of grid items. Now, I left this as a square, so you see it's really huge on the page. It's not exactly what we would want. So you can just click on edit here to edit this set of cards. And if you remember, I left this on. So I'm just going to turn it off, and you look, see what happens here. So I click it on, and you see it takes up more space. I click it off, and it kind of makes things fit more cleanly. And then I can do the same thing on this tab, and you see how it's taking up more space. It just makes it fit a little bit cleaner. It makes things fit a little tighter so you can fit it on the screen. So as you're doing these things, you can adjust this on and off to try to make it fit better. You see what happens when I turn that on and when I turn it off. So this is a really easy way to kind of get your screens laid out the way that you want. And when I hit save, I'm set. So there we go. I got a set of controls that kind of fit with each other and go with each other. And then I can say, you know what, I want to add something new on the screen. And I just start the same way, grid. And then I'm just going to turn that off, and I'm going to drop this down to 1. Now, if you need multiple columns on that first one, you can do that because maybe you want to set things up in a certain way. You have to just kind of lay things out in your mind a little bit to figure out like how many columns do I want initially, and then how many columns do I want inside of it. So that's why we're doing that inner grid. So we'll do an inner grid here. Now I have those cameras, so I could do the cameras side by side, for instance. So let's pull this down to 2, and then we'll turn that off. And the first thing I want is my picture entity, I believe is what it's called. Yeah, this one right here. So this I'm going to take, and I'm going to look for my camera. Yeah, so I have 2 different cameras here. I've got my backyard, that's kind of my main camera. And you see it comes up pretty easily. It didn't take a lot to get that done. I can name it Backyard 1. I have 2 cameras there in the backyard. This is kind of the address that it's going to go to. And then the camera entity, I don't really know why it wants this, but you can click it if you want to. It's nothing you have to have, it's optional here. The camera view says auto, and what I want is I want live. It's not giving me that. Yeah, there we go, live as the option. And the aspect ratio can be pretty important, so I believe this one I have set to 1280 by 720. It is not the full 1920 by 1920 by 1080, so it's 1280 by 720. Show the name, and then you have show state. It always says idle, so I can just turn that off. But if you want to show the state, if you have a camera that's good enough to show the state, you can click that. Again, if you have themes, you can change it. And then what does it do if you tap on it? It says more info. And if you do a hold action on a phone, it's the default action, whatever that is. So I think that's okay. That's got our first camera set. So now I'm just going to click on the add button right here, actually, because I have 2 columns I want to add. So I'm just going to do another picture entity, and we're just going to do the other camera, and it's this backyard 2 camera, and we'll just call this backyard wide. And you can kind of see here, see what I mean by idle. These both just say idle. They don't give off the information that we need to make this useful. So I can turn that off, and the idle is gone. Once we've got that set, again, you can come down here and change any information you need to about it. I want to set this to live so that it knows that it's a live feed. And then I'm just going to hit save. And right off the bat, I've got these 2 cameras that are there where I can read them. Now, I set this one with the actual 720 by or 1280 by 720. I need to do the same with this one, so I forgot to do that part on the aspect ratio. So I can go back down here, click on number 2, and right here, 1280 by 720, and then just tab out of that, and we can take a look. And now you see it fits a little bit nicer into that space. It looks a little cleaner. We hit save, and it looks a little bit better. It probably was fitting pretty well anyways, but now it looks a little better. And you can see I've got the live view, and I can click on these things, and they'll come up with a little bit larger view where I can see my yard and kind of see what's going on back there. So I can kind of keep an eye on things. And then this one I can actually see out my front gate, so if I click on it, I can even see the street down here, you know, over to the neighbor's yard and what's going on around the front side of the house through that gate when it's open. When it's closed, of course, I don't see much, but I can see if there's anything happening here in this area in the backyard as well. So now we've got a pretty good set of grids going. Now if I want to add more to this, I can, and really you may want to add more versus setting up a different grid, but sometimes you may want to kind of just hit the X, see what it looks like, and you might want to just add a new grid card here, and then you can move these things around in different ways. But really, as you keep working, you start adding these entities and adding these things into your system, and you start getting this very clean looking layout, and you start getting things like this where you're like, I have four. This one needs to be a column of 4 columns. This one's 3 columns. This one's a single column, and it's all in really one grid card. So if I go here and I do edit layout here, you can see it's all in a single card, and how I've kind of done it. So if I go here to edit, you'll see that I've actually got 2 columns up here, but it flows to the next level. And then here I've got 3 items, which is this. So you can kind of see what this looks like and how it's going to function. And then I've got the Roku stuff at the very top there. So it's pretty easy to kind of set this up and get it to look the way that you want. So see, this is its own thing, and then this is its own thing. So if I do this, it's just one, and then one inside of it, and then I set up the Roku stuff just to make it pretty clean, but I can add things to it as I go if that's what I want to do. I could even take that card below it and set it, because this is such a small amount of stuff on a single page. But that's really the gist of how you do these things, and you kind of set up your tabs the way you want pretty easily. Here again, I've got the cameras, and I've got this stuff, and then I've got even my office kind of set up in a little grid where I've got the weather, and then I've got just a nice layout here for whether my light is on in my office. It is, and my fan indicator here is just my air conditioner. So there's really some cool stuff you can do with these things, and this is just using the built-in cards and the built-in layouts that you have in Lovelace to start really building out these nice looking dashboards, so that as you get going, you've got this really clean look. So here I've got kind of what we were setting up earlier. Here's my camera, so I put my camera below this side, and then here I've got the weather, and I've got the different things that are just kind of in the living spaces of my home. I'm tracking different people's phones and statuses. Of course, most of the time we're home currently because of the pandemic, even though it's starting to lighten up. I track whether our phones are charged or not, so I can remind people to plug their phones in at night and make sure that they're getting charged up. I've got my alarm system set here so that I can put in the codes that I want and set it, unset it, turn it on and off, remotely pretty easily. And then of course I've got the other camera. So it's a nice clean layout. Now, if you're ever wondering, okay, well, this is great on the screen on my desktop. If you want to see what it looks like whenever you're going to have, a mobile device, which is really helpful, and if you want to kind of develop to the mobile device, you can do that here in the browser, which is great because it gives you a lot of screen real estate to work with, but you can see it. So what I do is, and you're going to see this show up at the bottom of the screen, I use Control Shift and I. So it's Control Shift I, so it's kind of like Control capital I. So, and that opens up your developer tools here at the bottom of the screen. And if you look right here, you'll see this thing that looks like a phone and a tablet. If you click on that, it's going to change your screen layout to look like whatever device you kind of pick from this top level here. And you can change the dimensions. If you know the dimensions of a device you have and it's not listed, explicitly in this predefined list, you can say, what is this going to look like? So in this case, I've got the iPhone 6, 7, 8, and basically running iOS 11. But I can also look at an iPad, an iPhone 10 or 10R. So if I say, what is this going to look like on a 10 or 10R? Now this power button is kind of in a weird place. I don't know why that happened, but it doesn't actually show up on my stuff. But then you can say, what's this going to look like here? I'm not sure why that power button's there. Turn that back off. There's not even a power button on the screen. Oh, it's this icon right here that's kind of it's not nicely changing as I go back and forth. But if we go back into that mode, yeah, it's those icons. There we go. Now the icons look a little bit cleaner. So when I changed it, it kind of messed it up. But you can scroll and you can see like, oh, hey, there's my cameras, here's the weather, here's my controls for these things that I don't use all the time, but I might want pretty quick access to. And this is kind of your default tab that opens up. But I've got control to my temperature, which for me is a big thing to be able to control that. I don't know why that's showing up way over there, but normally that would be over here, this little device to change what actually the temperature setting is for the home. And I can see that it's idle right now, and it would change to cooling if it was running, or heating, depending on what you have it set on. And then up here I've got, again, batteries and where people are, whether they're home or away, the alarm system, and then my secondary camera. So you can kind of say, hey, this is pretty good, and anybody can scroll real quick and kind of see what they want to see. Not too bad, right? Makes it pretty easy to start developing for a device whenever you're looking at it that way. If you're trying to build a a layout that's going to look good like on an iPad or a tablet of some kind, you can click here. Now you see my icons got kind of messed up again. So if I just, seems like if I click this and then click back in, it kind of adjusts that for me. There we go. Now, this has the device in portrait mode. So if you want landscape, you see there's a little rotation option right here. You just rotate, and again, it's going to mess up the icons when it does the preview. I'm not sure why that happens. Maybe Google, maybe Chrome would do better with this. It doesn't seem to like it. But now I can turn it off, turn it back on, but it seems to want to rotate almost on its own. So you've got this little weird thing. Don't worry about that. But you can see what this is going to lay out and look like, how it's going to lay out, and what it's going to look like when you put it on a tablet. So if you're going to say, I'm going to mount this tablet, you know, somewhere on the wall for people to have access and control to different information, this is kind of what that layout would look like. This is what my second layout would look like, you know, so I can kind of see. Now, of course, you can create a separate user, and we'll talk about this in another video, but as I move around, this is kind of not liking some of the icons. But other than that, you can kind of get a feel for how it's going to look and how it's going to function whenever you put it up on a tablet or a device like this. And really, this is a great way to kind of see what you're trying to do with these grids. So you can bring this back into normal mode and just start working with it and really start creating some nice dashboards and some nice things that can really help you kind of find the devices that you want. You can separate this by room in your home, or by zone, or however you want to do that, you know. And then in the permissions, you can set up different users who can see these things. So my mother and my mother-in-law both have access to the mobile application, and I give them access to this view because this is kind of a generic, everybody can see this and do things and interact with these things view. And then I also give them access to this view so that they can see that the sign is on or off without having to go outside, and they can turn on our back porch kind of party lights, I guess is what you'd call them. And then of course, I don't really, this is just my test view, so nobody's been restricted from this, so they'd be able to see this right now as well. This is really the basics of setting up Home Assistant with grid views. It's a really, really useful tool and a really great way to be able to lay out your Home Assistant and make some really cool stuff. And I've seen some amazing layouts that people have done. If you have better eyes than me, you might even want to put more things on a single row with more columns. You can put 8 things in a column. You can put 6 things. You can really just do this up. And the great thing about it is that grid column layout just kind of sizes itself nicely, and you can see kind of how it looks here whenever you do that. I want to say thank you to all of my subscribers and all of my patrons over at Patreon. Seriously, you guys make this so worth it for me to do these videos every week. I really, truly enjoy it, and I just can't say thank you enough. If you're enjoying these videos, subscribe. Let YouTube know that I'm doing a good job by subscribing to the channel. Plus, you'll get notified when I have new videos coming out. And finally, if you're enjoying what I'm doing, give it a like. Just click on that thumbs up, and that way YouTube knows that you like it, and they'll pass it along to other people that might enjoy my content as well. I hope this has been useful for you. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, tell your friends about it, and I'll talk to you next time.